AJ from AG Tutorials, and in this video I'm going to be teaching you how to web scrape in Swift using the SwiftSoup library. And if you're familiar with Python, you know that there's something called BeautifulSoup, in which you can also do something very similar, and it is one of the most powerful libraries in Python and in general that allows you to web scrape. And so today we will be using the SwiftSoup library, which is located in CocoaPods, and I'll show you how to install all of this. And SwiftSoup was inspired by, I think, JSoup for Java, and it has a very similar structure to the BeautifulSoup for Python. So when I say CocoaPods, what do I mean? Well, CocoaPods.org is, as you can see here, it is a dependency manager for Swift and Objective-C Cocoa projects. And if you know, all of the applications are usually called Cocoa Touch classes. When we go and create a new file in our projects, it's usually a Cocoa Touch class type, and so it is in a Cocoa project. So there's Objective-C, and then there's also Swift that it works with, and of course we'll be using Swift. And it has, and you can see it's been used in over 3 million apps, which is incredible. So the one we'll be using is called SwiftSoup. So SwiftSoup, as you can see here, is HTML parser, reader, XML with all of this. And this is what it's called right here, SwiftSoup. And SwiftSoup, as you can see, if you click on it, it has a little installation guide, and it is available through CocoaPods. So I'll show you how to actually add in CocoaPods to your computer, and then how to actually install this particular pod. However, it is recommended that you do take this and you use and you do copy it so that we can use it later. So the first thing you want to do is to open up Terminal and just click Command Spacebar and type in Terminal. That allows you to get to it much quicker. And if you click on Terminal, this is what pops up. It will say right here the user, and then it has a little $sign. And so what you want to do is, if you do not have CocoaPods installed, you want to type in sudo gem install CocoaPods. And gem is referring to the Ruby, because this is the Ruby language. So sudo gem install CocoaPods. And if you click enter, it should ask for a password. And for password, you want to type in your computer password. It won't show up as you're typing it, so you just have to type it in correctly and then click enter. And then what's going to happen is it's going to give you a long list. It might take a while, about 5 minutes or so, and then it will fully install CocoaPods. You know it's fully installed when you have this line again, when you have that $sign. That says that it's fully done at the end, and there should be some green or something. I've already installed it, so I won't actually reinstall it again, but that is how you install it. So I'm going to close Terminal and reopen it back up to get a blank terminal so that we can actually work and try to install SwiftSoup. And so we actually need an Xcode project to use SwiftSoup. So open up Xcode and create a new project. And I'm not going to be working with the storyboard at all, so no UI. It's only going to be in the actual code. And because this is kind of an introduction, it's getting you used to how you actually use it. And then you can go on and then integrate it into your actual applications. So I'm going to use a single view app. I'll just call this web scraping, and I'll just save it to my desktop. Okay, so there we have it now. This is the Xcode project, and that's all you need. Now you can actually close. You can close your Xcode project and quit Xcode completely. So you might be wondering, okay, well that's interesting. And that is because we need, when we install our pod, it's called a pod, into our project, we need it to be closed. So now how do we actually install the SwiftSoup into our project? So what you need to do is type in ls into your terminal and click enter. And this actually lists out all of the file directories within your computer. So it's important to note that you need to know exactly where you saved that project. See, I saved it on the desktop, so it's easy for me to access, but if you saved it within folders, it's important to know your path. Now, if you want to actually go inside, so I want to go, because it is in my desktop directory, so I want to go into desktop, type in cd, and then space, and then the name of the folder, so desktop. And then you'll notice that this just appears. It says the computer name and then dash desktop. And then what you can do is you can type in ls again, and now it lists out all of the files inside of that directory and inside of the desktop directory. And we are using the web scraping folder, so you can type in cd web scraping. Now if you use 2 words in the name of your folder, you need to use quotes, but since I only use 1 word, I don't need to use quotes around the name. So cd and then ls, and then you want to stop right here. When you see that webscraping.xcode project folder, that is when you know to stop. You do not want to type in cd and then anything else. Now that you have CocoaPods installed, you can or the CocoaPods installed to your computer, you can now just type in pod, P-O-D, and then init, I-N-I-T, and click enter. And then what you can do is open up that folder, and you'll notice now that there is a pod file. A pod file has been added. So you want to double click on the pod file, and then underneath where there's kind of the hashtag symbol, and then pause for web scraping, underneath that is where you want to paste that thing that you copied off of the website, the pod, and then single quote, SwiftSoup, and then single quote. And you want to make sure that it is lined up with that hashtags. You might have to add some, or the pound symbol, you might want to add some spaces, right, like that, so it's aligned. Now click save, or use Command S to save it, and then Command Q to quit completely text edit. Now you want to open terminal, and right after you typed in that pod init, now you want to just type in pod install. And what it's going to do is it's going to now, as you can see here, it says installing SwiftSoup, and SwiftSoup is our framework that we're using, or our library that we're using. So now you can see that we have the $, and it said pod installation complete, so now it is installed. And so now you want to open up that web scraping folder, and you'll now notice that it adds a new file, XC workspace. That is what we want to open up. We do not want to open up XC, our Xcode project anymore. It's only our XC workspace that we want to open up, because XC workspace actually contains all of our pod files. So now you can see right here that we have web scraping and then pods. So we want to open up our actual project name, and then the folder again with the same name, and this should bring those same files, our view controller and everything. So in our view controller is where we're actually, and I will collapse both sides. We don't need them. So this is the view controller, and this is where we're actually going to try out our SwiftSoup. And so now that we've actually installed the pods and everything, and we've installed the library framework inside of our project, we now want to type in import SwiftSoup, and it's a module. So import the SwiftSoup module. And you can see right now that now we have access to all of the SwiftSoup functions and data types and all of that. And then our view load is actually where our code will be run. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually create a function. I'm going to create a function like this. Actually, I probably will not create a function. I will just use the view load. Just erase the comments inside of the view load. And so whenever we're working with SwiftSoup, we want to use the do and the catch, because in case there's an error, which there could be if a website changes or something, or our HTML changes or something went wrong, we do not want the entire thing to necessarily crash. And we also want to know a little bit more about the error we might get. So we type in do, and we can go down here, it says do catch, and it creates a do, try, and then catch. You want to actually erase the try right now. So you only want the do and you only want the catch. So I'm going to start with the catch. So our pattern should be exception dot error, and then we want a type and a message. So our type will be let type. We'll create a constant, and then let message, and then we can, in our statement, we can just print this out so that we know if there's actually an error, it will print out the type of the error and the message, so that we can try to fix that error. There. So we've created the catch part, and you can see that there's there is a little message here. Catch block is unreachable because no errors are thrown, because we still have to add that try in there, if you remember, that we deleted. So we will do that. So far, what is this telling us? This is saying that, okay, we're going to run the code in here, and if there's an error, we want to print out the type of the error and the message of the error. That is pretty much what this is. And then if there's an error doing that, we want to type in catch again, and we want to just print out nothing at that point because there's nothing to print out. So we'll just print 2 quotes like this, 2 quotes. Okay, now we have our do. And the first thing we want to do is we actually want to create a constant for the HTML that we're actually going to parse and we're going to look through. And so if you are actually wanting to pull HTML off of a website, we need to use the WebKit, WebKit inside of Swift, and that will actually be in another video. Right now I'm only going to be working with an HTML that I actually have here, but it is important to know that later on I might make a video, and I'll probably link it to this, on how we can pull HTML from a web page. So that's kind of part 1, and then you want to store that HTML into a constant. And so the HTML I'm going to use inside of the sample.html. So I'm just going to open it with text edit. And this is the HTML. Oh, okay, that's not right. Let's open it with, in fact, let's just drag this in. So we'll just drag in our HTML file right into our project. Like that. And this is the HTML. We'll just copy it. We'll copy this HTML. And we'll go to the view controller and we'll just paste it in. So let HTML equals that. And so I've specifically used a special type of HTML that has an H1, a P, and then an A tag with a link attribute and a class and an ID, and then an unordered list and list items, so that we can know how we can get into every part of our HTML. So once we've created an HTML constant, we need to actually store this as a document type so that SwiftSoup can actually work with it. So we need to say let doc, or you can call this whatever you want. I'm calling it doc because it's of type document, and document should be inside of our SwiftSoup. So let document equals, and this is where we use our try. So we say try, and then SwiftSoup dot parse like this, and then our HTML is our HTML string that we created up here. And so we're now saying, and I'll collapse this so you can see everything, we're creating a constant now that is of type document, which is the parsed version of our HTML. Good, so now if we want to get anything out of our HTML, we need to reference this doc constant. So let's say I want to get the P tag. I want to get the text out of the P tag, and this is the P tag right here. It is has an opening and a closing tag, and then the text my first paragraph. So I can create a constant called P. I can just create this object, and the type of it is actually an element. An element has also been added with SwiftSoup. An element is basically kind of an HTML element type. And we can use another try, so we can set it equal to try doc, which is our document, and then dot select. And select, now we can put in the tag that we want to actually select. We want to select the P tag, so we can put quotes and then P, and that should select the P tag. And then we want to get the first one the first one in the document. Of course, there is only one, but if you have multiple, we only want the first one, so we can type in dot first, like that. And then we put the exclamation point here at the end to prevent any errors. So let P equals element. So now let P of type element, and we've selected the P tag. So now this actually stores that one part of the P tag right here. That just stores that. So if we were to print it out so we can actually see what happens, print out P, which is an element, and I were to run it, of course, this is only going to pull up a blank page because there's nothing in our app. And I'm going to just slide this over so that we can just get our output. I'm running this on the 10R. And of course, we won't see anything on this page because we haven't added anything, but it should run this code inside of our project once it loads up. There we go. So it looks like it's loaded up, and let's see what happens over here if it prints out anything. There we go. So it's printed out that P tag. with the opening tag and the closing tag and then the text inside. So that is perfect. But now what if we only want the text inside of this? I mean, we could use some sort of split type of thing to split our string, but that's too much work. We only want the text inside of that. And SwiftSoup has that option. So what you can do, instead of printing out P, we can print out try, because there might not be any text. So try P dot text. And what that does here is, if I were to run this, it should only print my first paragraph. It should only print my first paragraph because that is the text inside of the element, and it does. So this is very useful. Let's say you want to get information out of a website and you have a very specific tag that you want, and you can just get the text out of it, and let's say you can then manipulate this data later. So it's very, very useful in data analysis, what we're doing right here. Okay, so we've created the P element and then we printed out the text of it. However, I also have an A tag, which is a link. I have an A tag right here, and I want to get that element. I use a very similar thing up here. We say let A of type element because we're creating a constant with element type, and it should be equal to try, and then doc.select, same thing, except now we're selecting the A tag, not the P tag, and we want to select the first one in case they're multiple. And then what we can do is, what do we want actually? I want to get the link out of this. And you're wondering, okay, well, how do we do that? If you know about HTML, in fact, let me see if I can open up. I might be able to just open up the sample HTML and kind of guide you through how this actually works here. Okay. There we go. So I've just, I've expanded this HTML so you can actually see it. This A tag, it's actually the link inside of it right here. The link inside of it is actually an attribute. It is actually an attribute and not a, as you can see right here, not actual text. Because this is text right here inside of the tag, but we actually want the href attribute. So what we need to do is we can create a link. So let link. And our link's actually of type string. We want it to be type string. It's not an element. And we need to set this equal to try. And then a.attribute, attr. And then the attribute key we want to do. And we can erase everything inside of this parentheses. The attribute that we actually want is the href attribute. Because the href attribute is the link. Okay, and if you go to this HTML, the link is stored inside of the href attribute. So if we want the link, we need to get the attribute of href, and that is now our link. Now let's say I want to get the text inside of it. Well, we do the same thing that we did over here. So we say let text, and it is of type string because it is a string type, equals try a dot text, and text is just its own thing. You don't need anything inside of it. Now, let's say I also, if you notice inside of this A tag, we have a class, and the class is called myLink. So I can actually go in and get out the class name. So I can say let class name, and my class name is also a string, so I can say class name of type string, and I can set this equal to try a dot class name. And I can do the same thing for ID. I can say let ID name of type string is equal to try a dot ID. And so now we have all of these, and I'll just print them all out. So I'll print out, what is going on? There we go, print out the link, and then I'll print out the text, print out the text, I'll print out the class name, and I will print out the ID name. There we go. So I have now everything that I should print out. And it also says right here, no calls or throwing occur. So with ID, it's special. You don't actually need the try when you're using the ID right here, but everything else you need the try. So I've now, if I were to run this right here, let's see what happens. It says build succeeded. And let's see. So it prints out, of course, this is the first thing that we did, so we don't have to worry about it. But it did print out the link. It printed out the text, and it printed out the class name, and it printed out the ID name. So all of that works. And this is very, very useful if you want to get more information out of your elements. Now the last thing which I want to show you is what if I have multiple elements and I want to select certain one, because I've been doing this dot first right here. But what if I want to get multiple elements? And that's why inside of my HTML I made sure to have multiple list item elements. And so I have 4 list items. So how do I do it? Well, if I go back to my view controller, you'll notice that whenever I created these elements, I said of type element. So when you want to have a group of elements, we need to say let, and I'll just say li for list items. Instead of saying element like this, I want to actually create an array of elements. So I'm storing this as an array of elements, and I can set this equal to try document.select and then li. And a lot of people think, okay, well this should give me the array because here's dot first, so that means that this should be an array. This is actually not in necessarily proper. We need to say dot array, and that converts all of the list items into now a array of elements, and that is exactly what we want. So now if I want, let's say, the third one, and remember since indexes start at 0, for the third one, if I want the third one, it's actually the index of 2. So I can say print list item, which is now, as you can see, an array of elements, and then I can specify the one I want, which is the third one. And of course I type in 2 because 0 is the first one, 1 is the second one, 2 is the third one. And so now if I were to run this, you can see, let's see, did it do it? Yeah, it did right here. It printed out, of course this is slightly out of order, so I do apologize, but as you can see I printed these down here. But you can see right here, it did print out the third element, and that is exactly what we wanted. So in this video so far, we've talked about how to convert an HTML to a document type, how to select and get out an element, for example, a p tag element, a paragraph, and we were able to get the text out of it. Then over here, we kind of worked with getting out multiple attributes. We worked on how we get out an attribute that we specify. Then we worked out how we can get the class name and the ID. And then here we talked about how we can combine elements into an array of elements like this. And that allows us, if we have multiple elements with the same tag, that means that we can now specify which one exactly that we want. And in this case, I use the third one because, again, indexes start at 0. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below, and like and subscribe for more content. Again, thanks for watching. And also, I will have a link to the SwiftSoup thing on the website on CocoaPods. I will link it in the description below. But again, thanks for watching.